Welcome to Hive Mind. This is Edge with my co-host speaker. We're here today to talk about the Sons of the Crown. It's been a little while since we've done one of
Yeah,
these.
I know, right? I do miss talking to you. I miss our vids, but life is crazy, and we'll always come back and do something when we find a good topic to do it. It's just we just don't have the time that we're used to, but we do love doing this. And when a significant event happens, we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks, and of course, the death of the Queen, which has created huge impacts and huge ripples around the world for a plethora of reasons. We felt like it's something to talk about. And the royal family is definitely something that we've talked about in the past and something that is going to impact us in the future because the royal family is not what it used to be, I guess. So,
All right. We could go really, really deep as, and
we can.
far, far back centuries and all of that. But for the sake of time, I think that it's really important to focus and really hone in on what the death of the Queen really means and signifies. A little bit of history about the people in power now, the new King Charles and his history with pedophilia, child trafficking, as well as we should definitely discuss Prince Andrew and his connection to all of that. I think we should definitely get into a little bit about the death of Princess Diana, and the new king's connection to that, of course, as well as pay for play schemes connected to the new King Charles and his role in the Great Reset and the climate hoax. All of this is very important and relevant to the time that we're living in right now.
Hmm. But before we get into that, I want to ask you a question. What what was your opinion on Queen Elizabeth?
I did not like her at all whatsoever. I did not trust her. I knew a lot of the, I would say, sinister aspects of the royal family. And so, yeah, I absolutely did not have any kind of appreciation for the royal family, including the
Mhm.
Queen. Although I will say that the Queen did attempt to keep up appearances throughout the decades of her reign, amidst numerous scandals that surrounded the royal family.
Well, that's one thing that is very interesting with Queen Elizabeth is the scandals that has revolved around the royal family. They've never really hit her. She's kind of been very scandal free for 70 years, but everything around her seems to show the rot.
Yes, definitely showing the rot. And, I think that the death of the Queen is very symbolic. I mean, the timing is really important. I believe that it marks the end of an era and it signals the beginning of something entirely new, as though it signifies this next phase that we're entering into of their plan to implement the Great Reset. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, the timing, I mean, she was an old lady. It was always going to happen sooner or later, but it just seems totally perfect for someone like Charles to take over which I've read in a few articles, being dubbed the Green Prince, obviously because of his vigorous stance on climate change and the environment, and using those proxies to make himself money and to usher in the Great Reset, which we've said before. So it's a very convenient time, especially with everything else going around Europe at the moment: energy crisis, money crisis, inflation,
Right, right.
everything going on. So it and like you mentioned before, it does seem like a very good distraction at the moment from the British population struggling to eat.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So I do think the funeral provides this sort of great cover and distraction from the manufactured financial and energy crisis, which is looming in England. I mean, looking here at some of the latest data coming out of England and Wales, companies going bankrupt, that is up 42% from 2019, up 43% from the year prior. So, I mean, we're talking about a huge segment of the business sector in England going under due to the financial policies, whether it was from COVID early on, and now with this war with Russia and Ukraine, and the billions being sent over there, and the sanctions on Russian energy. It's absolutely devastated the business sector in England, and bankruptcies are way up. And with Truss coming in, Boris Johnson exiting, another very symbolic thing was that the very last thing that the Queen did before the announcement of her passing was to appoint Truss. Okay, I do think that that's symbolic as well.
Hmm.
And
Uh,
because all of this was very, mm, I don't want to say unprecedented, but it was just very unusual. This stepping down of Boris Johnson, this sort of special election for the new prime minister to take his place, and then Truss being appointed, and immediately the Queen dying. But Truss has actually taken and inherited this huge economic and energy manufactured crisis, that they have created, and is trying to sort of, stop the the complete draining of the wealth of the country by and their plan is ridiculous. They're trying to basically create more debt in order to cut the energy bills for these companies and individuals who are just, either going bankrupt or, just being left financially destitute from these high energy bills. And so their plan is to
Economics
just
101.
create more debt. So more inflation, hyperinflation. And then also tax the energy companies. So the energy companies, when there's already an energy shortage, are going to penalize the energy companies even more. I mean, that just seems to me like it's going to create even more shortage.
And at the same time, like I said, I've got friends and contacts in Russia on the ground. Russia's doing fine. Isn't it
Hmm.
funny how all these Western countries are in the shit because of this?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I think that the economic situation for the UK is so dire. I mean, the Treasury is even refusing to publish a forecast because that's how bad the forecast is. Even considering all of this sort of government intervention, to help people and companies out with paying their energy bills. So yeah, it's not looking good financially um, for England. And I do think that the death of the Queen and all of the pomp and circumstance of the funeral, it's providing great cover for that. I mean, they've robbed the people blind for decades and created this sort of sovereign debt crisis of which there's really no way out at this point. And now they have to implement a great reset of the monetary system in order for them to stay in power. So they're perpetuating war, they're using the climate hoax. These are all scapegoats because they don't want the people to really realize it was them all along, the people in power, that created this mess. And so I think that the funeral of the Queen coming at a time when they're preparing for this sort of economic crash and a great reset of the monetary system, it provides that bread and circuses distraction that they need to appease the people right now because they don't want people in the streets rioting or um, uh, you know, protesting over their energy bills or the cost of food, or how they are just completely left financially destitute from the inflation and economic policies, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the British people, have well, a lot of the Commonwealth in general have this fond love for the Queen. Maybe not the royal family, but a fond love for the crown. So something like this is perfect to not let a riot or something happen. I mean, you have seen a few outliers on two different scale, outliers that are completely socialists and paint the crown as racist colonization and all that. And then you have the people that are more thinking more generally, the ones that are calling out Prince Andrew when he's walking down the thing and getting arrested for it. But
Right.
but those ones are the ones I want to focus on, because they're the interesting ones. They're the ones that they're the ones getting arrested. So there's
Yeah.
something to
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So if people don't know what speaker is referring to, of course there were, thousands upon thousands of people waiting in line for hours upon hours in order to see the Queen's funeral entourage passing by, or participate in any way in the ceremonies. But there, and so, all of these thousands of people crying, mourning, celebrating, singing. But there were a few instances, as you just mentioned, one calling out Prince Andrew, right? For what exactly did that protester say?
He was just calling him a dirty old man.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah. And
With
obviously
the
referencing the Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein connections. Yeah, yeah. And then another guy calling out, I believe it was Prince Charles, was it not? When he said something to the effect of, we can't even pay our energy bills, we can't even buy food. And here we are as a country paying for all of this, ceremony. Mm-hmm.
which is a completely valid point.
Yeah, yeah, but I did want to show you this, which is kind of funny. So Biden, went to attend the Queen's funeral, and of course, everywhere the guy goes, apparently even in England, there are F Joe Biden chants. So even the people of England get it. Oh, yeah, but I know we wanted to highlight just a couple of members of the royal family, in particular Prince Andrew and now King Charles, and their connections and to pedophilia. Also, we're going to get into more things with the new King Charles and his connections. But let's start off with Prince Andrew, because obviously there's the connection to Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. But the question really is how far does that connection and those ties extend? I mean, because these are convicted pedophiles and known child traffickers. So, I mean, they were very, very close. I mean, so close that Epstein and Maxwell stayed at the Queen's log cabin. Okay, this came out during Maxwell's trial. This was like a new photograph, and it was quickly connected to, and this revelation came that this photo of Maxwell and Epstein was taken exactly in the spot where the Queen sat. So this was the Queen's cabin. And so it kind of really highlights how close they were to the royal family to have that kind of access.
Mm-hmm. And wasn't there an article that he brought up that a, a child said that he was molested in the Balmoral
Mm-hmm.
house in
Yep.
Switzerland, connecting the same house as well? So,
Yeah, good
um,
point. Good point. Because this is not just about Epstein, and we're going to talk about Savile as well, but this is about pedophile rings being run out of Buckingham Palace and Balmoral, where that photo of Epstein and Maxwell was taken. We have I believe he was 16 at the time. He was working um, for Buckingham Palace, and he was recruited and groomed to become part of this VIP pedophile ring run out of Buckingham Palace and Balmoral. So, yeah, very interesting that connection when you see Epstein and Maxwell at this retreat cabin at Balmoral, where, the Queen often frequented as well. So
Hmm.
you're telling me that the royals didn't know what was actually going on? Give me a break.
Hmm.
And not only
It's
that, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's all very. I mean, once you put it all together and you add the Epstein, the Savile, and there is other cases that we'll show before of this sort of stuff being run at least through or around the royal family, to think that not one of them knew what was going on is just, in my opinion, extremely ignorant. And especially connecting Prince Andrew. I mean, if you look at Seville's cases, he's very close to Charles. Charles used him as a sort of, but more like cancel than anything else.
Yep.
Um, don't tell me Andrew didn't as well. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
nothing is said about Savile and Andrew, but considering their ties, considering their rings and their operations, which they had, we know Savile had an extensive one. Same with Epstein. Don't tell me Andrew didn't delight in the pleasure of these two people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Maxwell and Kevin Spacey, Ghislaine Maxwell and Kevin Spacey, another serial pedophile, literally sat on the Queen's throne during a private tour authorized by Prince Andrew. So this goes way beyond just a minor insignificant association with the royals. When you're sitting on the Queen's throne, you have access to that. And look at this photo here where they're laughing it up and high-fiving as though they know the kind of control and power they have. I mean, everyone knows Epstein was running a honey trap operation for the intelligence communities to trap the most high profile and influential people in the world. And they clearly succeeded in compromising the British monarchy, did they not? I think that this photo really captures that. And to say that the Queen wasn't aware or, other members of the royal family weren't aware, as you just said, absolutely ignorant, or naive, I guess I should say, to,
Hmm.
to say that because of all of the piling evidence. But what's more disturbing, and which you just mentioned, was this connection between the new King Charles and his relationship with Jimmy Savile, because we're just now learning only recently that the known serial pedophile and abuser Savile was really a close advisor, not just to Prince Charles, but really to the entire royal family, including the Queen. Prince Charles wrote Savile several letters. Asking for advice, not just for himself, but other members of the royal family, including the Queen, and what they should do on certain matters. And he was a very, very close confidant. And what in the way Savile flaunted, he just really flaunted his child sex abuse, and the way the
Ah, he,
BBC covered it up.
he
I'm
was he was a sort of a ringleader magician. The way he performed. I mean, his whole persona was napped, right? But yet he threw subtle hints everywhere all the time. And looking back on it now, they're so easy to pick up. But at the time, he had the nation under a spell.
Yeah, and you don't think the royals knew exactly what Savile was up to?
Of course. Hmm.
I mean, I think they not only knew, but were part of it. And his ability to procure children and cover it up was exactly the reason why they used him as a trusted confidant.
Hmm.
I mean, and it's not just Savile, as I just mentioned. There are cases of child sex rings, run out of Buckingham Palace and Balmoral. And here's an example of that. The Buckingham Palace butler ran a pedophile sex ring while working for the royal family. So this guy, for decades, groomed kids. And the way he would groom them and procure them in this child sex ring was by offering them this sort of like royalty treatment where they even got to like sit and have tea with the queen and stuff. All right. So
Hmm.
you're telling me that he's grooming kids by taking them to tea with the queen and she didn't know what the butler was up to? I mean, Yeah, it's kind of beyond when you put it all together, it's really beyond. Um, it kind of stretches this
Yeah, it's.
plausibility, like I
I
guess it's
mean,
plausible she didn't know, but it when you pile it on one thing on top of the next, on top of the next, on top of the next, it paints a
mm,
picture of, yeah, they couldn't have been
and I mean,
completely unaware.
as serious as this guy's ring was, it's nothing in comparisons to Savills and Epstein. These are two of the most prolific pedophiles the world has seen or I have known of. And yet they were both extremely close with two princes of the royal family.
Hmm.
That you have to take it in that full aspect. These were global pedophile rings to a mass degree. Right? Isn't it just a complete coincidence that the two princes of the crown happen to be best friends with them both?
Yeah, and you have a butler running a child sex ring for 30 years out of Buckingham Palace and you didn't notice. And
Hmm.
even though each of the, some of the kids were coming to meet and have tea with the queen.
Hmm.
Nah, I don't buy it.
You
But
can't.
and exactly like who is um this sex ring operator procuring children for?
Hmm.
That's the big question. I
That's
mean,
the question, isn't it?
right, right. And here we have, as you had previously mentioned, so one of these boys working out of Buckingham Palace, he was groomed to be part of this, what he calls a VIP pedophile ring out of Buckingham Palace and Balmoral. And so when you say VIP pedophile ring, so they were being procured for VIPs. So again, who are the VIPs that these kids are being procured for that are running out of Buckingham Palace? Well, I got you know,
Hmm.
a big idea as to who they are, right? So, I mean, when you add them all up, it's just too many
Coincidences.
scenarios, too
Hmm.
many coincidences. It really does paint a picture of culpability and of involvement in it. So yeah, it's disturbing once you start researching the pedophilia connections to the royal family just in the recent years and decades. But moving on to yet another scandal that has plagued the royal family, that is the death of Princess Diana, which just is never going to go away because yet again, way too many coincidences to add up to say no. And the royal family wasn't involved, right?
Yeah. I mean the amount of I'll quotation mark this, but conspiracy theories around it um, are phenomenal. Blood samples of hers, are controversial that maybe she was pregnant, they killed her off. Um, Allegations for MI6 involvement in her relationship with Dirty Faid. Uh,
Hmm.
it's the absence of CCTV images. It's that there's so many of them, and the fact that Diana was very open, especially after her divorce, of her feeling and inability of Prince Charles to also rule. She was very outspoken about that. She didn't think he'd make a good king. So there's a lot of things that she said and a lot of things that she was doing, especially with her relationship outside of this family, that I feel humiliated them in a way.
Yeah.
So
And when you talk about all of the coincidences or quote
yeah,
conspiracy theories connected to the death of Princess Diana, I really think that the most compelling piece of evidence is the letter that she wrote herself 10
mhm,
months prior to her death, predicting exactly how she was going to die. And in this letter that she wrote to her former butler, Paul Burrell, 10 months prior to her death, she stated that this particular phase in my life is the most dangerous, my husband is planning a quote accident in my car, brake failure, and serious head injury in order to make a path clear for him to marry Tiggy. Camilla is nothing but a decoy. So that is interesting. Tiggy apparently was the nanny of Princess Diana's sons. So apparently Diana believed that Charles was having an affair with Tiggy the nanny, to
And
which the
Camilla,
royal family covered up.
yes. Hmm.
Yeah. And apparently the former head of Scotland Yard questioned Prince Charles after Diana's death about this note that she had written and the contents of the note stating that, my husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure, and serious head injury in order for Charles to be free to marry Tiggy. So, but the royal family conducted, of course, an internal investigation and came
Yeah,
up with, oh, this was
of
all
course.
just, conspiracy
The
theories. Yes,
the
yet
best
again.
the best bit was, when in 2005, I think it was Prince Charles, as a witness, told the investigator in the case that he did not know about his former wife's note. And from 1995, he could not understand why she had these feelings. That was it. That was his rebuttal.
Yeah, yeah. And
That,
so
that was
what
it.
what people need to understand though is that this is the new king. And
Mm,
that should be chilling and disturbing to everyone. The lengths that he's willing to go to get what he wants, right?
mm.
And the lengths that the people around him are willing to go to cover it up.
Like, I, and we can get into this as we go. The repercussions of him being king now and the path that we take, because like I was saying before, and that's why I asked you that question, how you felt about the Queen, as much as you can jumble. Did she know this? Did she not know that? She conducted herself in the way where she kind of held it together and was able to um, have people's respect, I guess, and to hide these things well enough and to protect the crown in that sort of a way. I don't think Charles has that sort of pulling power, and I don't think he is, yeah, self-sustained enough to like not let his evil out. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well,
Like,
I think that Prince Charles is on the take to the
hmm,
highest bidder
boom.
and is completely controlled. I should say King Charles at this point, not Prince Charles, but and the reason why I say that is the next topic, which is apparently, which has emerged just this year, that Prince Charles on numerous occasions, well, he's not only associated with pedophiles and child traffickers and accused of having murdered Princess Diana, but he's also accused of using his power and influence in a pay for play scheme, just like the Bidens and the Clintons. He's apparently been taking money and laundering it through his fake foundations in exchange for favors on behalf of the royal family. Again, this is the new king, which confirms that the crown is for sale to the highest bidder.
Hmm. I mean, the royal family has money. I mean, their net worth, uh, I think is from anywhere from 2 billion to 28 billion in assets anyway, belonging to the crown. Now that's a lot of money, but there's a lot more money out there. I mean, they're powerful,
It's never enough for these people.
but there's sheiks out there that the sheiks and conglomerates that you know piss that sort of money. Right?
Yeah, yeah. And I really think that it shows that, the way that Charles is going to rule as a king, in the same way that the Biden regime rules. It's we're for sale to the highest bidder. And the same way that the Clintons operated through the Clinton Foundation when Hillary was at the State Department.
Mhm.
So it's all for sale to the highest bidder. But I think that the most important thing that we need to discuss And of all of these sinister aspects of the royal family and the new king, I think the most sinister is uh, basically about how he is playing this role in the Great Reset and the climate hoax. Because here we have him coming in as the new king right at a time that the UK is entering this sovereign debt crisis, and really essentially the world is entering a sovereign debt crisis. And there's this attempt by these globalists to reset the global financial system. And I believe this is the most sinister aspect of him coming to power, because Charles has been really in lockstep with the World Economic Forum and the UN for years. And as you'd mentioned, has been very, very influential and outspoken on his, climate hoax agenda. But it's really all about creating this sort of global government and consolidating all of the world's power and wealth. And I want to highlight this one speech that he gave at COP26 last year, because it says a lot about their plans for domination using the climate hoax, about taking control of trillions, hundreds of trillions of dollars. And he says it goes even far beyond global GDP. Global GDP, I think, is somewhere around 90 trillion. So if we're going far beyond global GDP, I assume that we're going into the hundreds of trillions of dollars that he's talking about taking control of here. And how is that even possible to go beyond global GDP?
Hmm.
I don't know. But he's calling for this vast military style campaign to take over private industry and even surpass governments and world leaders. What does that actually mean? There's a lot packed into that statement. We're talking
Yes.
about top-down control of hundreds of trillions of dollars beyond even the world's GDP, and surpassing the control of governments and world leaders. We're talking about literally the New World Order totalitarianism, and taking control of all companies too in this takeover. So with him in this transition of him as king, I really think this symbolically represents the implementation of the phase of the implementation phase of this New World Order plan. I think I should play just this short clip. It's less than a minute long, but there's really a lot packed into this statement. So hold on one second.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my plea today is for countries to come together to create the environment that enables every sector of industry to take the action required. We know this will take trillions, not billions of dollars. We also know that countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector, with trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders. It offers the only real prospect of achieving fundamental economic transition.
Hmm. Funny how they say the most sinister things with the nicest context.
Yeah, I mean, and there is one minor detail in that speech that he just gave, which really got a lot of attention when this video came out. And he says with trillions at his disposal. Did you hear that? With
Hmm.
trillions at his disposal. Now in print, and I'm looking at a write-up on that exact speech that he gave, it says with trillions at its disposal. And there's a big
A
difference
little Freudian
between,
slip.
yeah, there's a big difference between his and its, because he makes no reference to who his is referring to. But when you're talking in the context of a vast military style campaign to take over the hundreds and trillions of dollars of the entire world's wealth and centrally control it, being even beyond governments and world leaders, all at this sort of centralized new world order, government. And then I would assume that if he did, in fact, say with trillions at his disposal, he would be referring to whoever that individual in charge would be. So it is very ominous, this speech, in multiple ways. And especially now with him being the king. And now I know a lot of people would say, I don't care about the royals. They have no influence or power over me. I understand that. But they do have power and influence on a vast number of people in the world. And they do sway policies and to a degree. So I don't think that it should go unnoticed, the history and the connections of the incoming king.
Hmm. It's interesting how they're pretty, outspoken about taking over companies, and doing that. There's other countries that do things similar. I mean, in China, the way China does it, there's a thing called the chop, which is an interesting video in itself that we can do a video on. So the chop is like a stamp. It's a stamp with a company name on it, and it's business license. So what you see in like old movies and stuff, they stamp the papers, right? So the chop is used in every Chinese business, but not all chops are worth the same. There's certain chops are worth more, and the chops that are worth more are more at the hands of Xi Jinping, are more under control of the Chinese government. And those chops are, yeah, different, gold, silver, diamonds. It's very different. So it's interesting how these countries take over, or the process of taking over. And it's just interesting that China's done it very slyly, where the West haven't been able to do it as such, I guess. And then they're like, hey, we're just going to take it now.
Right. The West is quickly catching up to China in the totalitarian aspects, yes.
Mhm.
But talking about the new king being on the take, I think this picture really kind of sums everything up of who is really in charge. And if you really want to know who controls the new king, you only need to look at this picture. I mean, this is Evelyn Rothschild poking Prince Charles in the chest. And really, I think that this picture says a lot, because the Great Reset was really always about the central bankers and the collapse of the financial system and their attempts to reset the financial system so they can stay in power and consolidate even more power, wealth, and control without the people even realizing it. And so they have these scapegoats, whether it's war or climate hoax or COVID, but they have these scapegoats to blame so that they do not get blamed for the financial crash that they've created. And the British Crown has a role to play in their plans. Do they not? I mean,
100%. I think it's just going to come more and more to the surface as time goes on, especially now with the Green King.
yeah, if anything, these times have provided clarity, because I know that there is really a huge amount of mass formation psychosis going on, whether it's with COVID or the new thing, whatever that is, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, or climate hoax. But yeah, there is a lot of mass formation going on. But at the same time, to those who are willing to have just even the tiniest ounce of critical thinking, um, the the headlines that are coming out daily are providing so much clarity as far as their plans, because they have to ramp things up so quickly They're really not trying to to
they're not being
cover
chill
them
about
up.
it. Hmm.
They're not even trying to cover them up anymore. They're just right out in the open with their plans because, that's the phase that we're in, like this implementation phase of their Great Reset New World Order plans. They're not even really trying to hide them anymore. So for those who have eyes to see, it's never been more apparent. I think that it's just that the people have simultaneously as these, the veil's been lifted and really these people have all been exposed. Simultaneously, society has just become more distracted and dumbed down and in this mass formation. So really it's just breaking free of the mass formation to see things as they truly are, because it couldn't be more clear if you just have a little bit of critical thinking skills.
100%. You nailed it.
All right, so that was kind of an interesting, summary of
Yeah.
the royal family and crash course, because we could spend literally hours
It's
deep diving,
and
going
days.
back for years and years and years with this
We
family.
could,
But
you can go really dark with this family, but it's good to keep it in context. Otherwise,
yeah.
for days. But it was good to do this again.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can, start stringing some together when some good topics come up, because we always do love to get together and we always do love to do this. And love all you guys as well. We haven't talked to you in a while. And
Yes.
make sure you're still watching Dig It, because Edge is still on there every week. So
Yeah. So you can catch me on Dig It, but please be sure to share this podcast on HiveMind. We're on YouTube, BitChute, and Foxhole, and Pilled. And we will see you back next time right here on HiveMind.